Christine Blasey Ford goes on The View to lie again, just like she did 6 years ago, and we'll break down all of her lies. Speaking of lies, Joe Biden continues to lie about Donald Trump, and Joe Rogan is sick and tired of it. Sick and tired of lying Democrats, sick and tired of lying media, and Joe, so are we. And so we're going to share in your anger. Also, right now, as we speak, like 2 miles that way, on Capitol Hill, Tony Bobulinski is testifying in the latest impeachment hearing. We've already got great footage of that hearing, and you're going to see it coming up right now. We're brought to you by the Electronic Payments Coalition. My name's Larry O'Connor. Please call me Larry. Yeah, we're streaming. We should do that. I was going to say we're streaming on Rumble, but no, we're streaming. We're streaming live right now on Rumble to all of our great Rumble subscribers. Thank you for joining our team here. And go ahead and keep subscribing and keep liking our videos. We appreciate it very much. And we love the growing community and the great comments you're providing. Also, if you're watching us after the fact, after the live stream on any of our video platforms, please share and like these videos for us. And if you're watching on our Town Hall media platforms, we love you. We appreciate it. Take a look at our VIP program. You can become a VIP member with 50% off right now by using the code Larry. Just click on that VIP button right up there above my head. It's kind of over there, I think, on the page, whether you're watching at Town Hall or Hot Air, PJ Media, Red State, Twitchy, or, of course, at Bearing Arms. Thanks so much for that. Yeah, like I said, right now, as we speak, live, it's happening. The latest impeachment hearing. It's part of the oversight committee that's headed up by James Comer and Jim Jordan and Jason Smith. They're the chairmen of oversight and of judiciary and of ways and means, respectively. And they're methodically going through all of the information they've already gathered about the crimes of the Biden family, the corruption of the Biden family, the conflicting stories and testimony of the Biden family. Hunter Biden was supposed to be there today, but he didn't show up. Why? Because everybody else on the dais has a different story, a different version of events. And Hunter Biden would have to face his former business partners who have told this committee under oath, oh yeah, there was corruption. They were selling access to Joe Biden. Joe Biden was the big guy. Hunter Biden didn't show up. This is serious stuff. This involves the corruption of our federal government, the selling of public office, and ultimately could lead to the impeachment of the president of the United States. It doesn't get more serious than that. So, how are the Democrats treating it? Not seriously at all. One of them even showed up for the cameras wearing a Vladimir Putin mask.
Congressman, can you explain what you're wearing?
I just came to thank James Comer for taking all of our intelligence and using it in the committee. Maybe he can come see the technology in our grocery stores. Thank you.
Congressman, I think this committee was kind of immature.
Congressman, don't you think that's a little immature? I think that's understating what we just saw. It's also a complete and total lie and fabrication. Did you get what he said? I'm here to thank James Comer for using all of our intelligence and using it for this hearing against Joe Biden. In other words, he's still peddling the bogus, debunked, outrageous, this is all a Russian plot kind of crap about the Hunter Biden laptop. He's still selling that lie. And I assure you, on CNN and MSNBC, they'll play that and they'll laugh at this congressman. It's Jared Bernstein, by the way. They will celebrate it, and they won't ever actually explain how he just repeated a lie to the American people and to the press, claiming that this story is nothing more than Russian propaganda. That's still the Biden line, by the way, that they've been peddling since 2020. Now, who was that congressman, by the way? I just mentioned his name. When last we saw him, James Comer was treating him the way he should be treated, like this.
Continue to try to
reclaiming my time.
No, I'm not going to give you your time back. We can stop the clock. You all continue to. You look like a Smurf here, just going around and all this stuff. Now, listen,
Mr. Chairman,
I'm going to tell you something.
Hold on. If we're not on time,
we disinformation.
You have gone on TV.
That's right. That's right. It's Congressman Jared Markowitz. And James Comer put him in his place in only the way Jared Markowitz should be put in his place. This clown shows up wearing a Vladimir Putin mask to this hearing, claiming that this is all a big plot from Russia. James Comer treated him exactly how he should be treated. A Smurf. That's what he is. He's a Smurf. By the way, sadly, in that video, you couldn't see what James Comer was looking at when he called him a Smurf. So we'll show it to you. There. That's what he was looking at. He does look like a Smurf. Smurfs are cuter. But he certainly dressed like a Smurf. He should have said, "You're dressed like a Smurf." Who wears that to Congress? No wonder he's putting a Vladimir Putin mask on. He's hanging his head in shame. You Smurf. It was serious business. Tony Bobulinski, the brave, courageous whistleblower who was the former business partner, he was so close to Hunter Biden's corrupt business dealings that a meeting was arranged with Joe Biden himself. They met for quite some time with James Biden, the brother, as well as with Hunter, and then one-on-one. That's his testimony. He's already told it to Tucker Carlson on Fox News Channel 2 weeks before Election Day. But if you weren't watching Fox News that night, you didn't see the video of the interview because it was deleted by social media platforms because we were told it was Russian disinformation. Tony Bobulinski properly started the hearing in his testimony in his statement this way.
Should I allow Hunter to give his opening statement first?
Well, doesn't appear Mr. Biden showed up for his public hearing, so we'll recognize you, Mr. Bobulinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
A bit of a savage troll job there, but it makes the point. Hunter Biden was supposed to be sitting right next to him. They still have the empty chair there. I defer to Hunter Biden. Let's let him start first. It's like Clint Eastwood interviewing Obama there at the 2012 convention. But then we got to the crux of it. And what Tony Bobulinski said was absolutely devastating. And he turned his guns on the Democrats on that dais, the ones who show up, and instead of wearing a mask and dressing like a Smurf, they actually use the power of their position to lie about him, to lie on behalf of the Biden family, and to lie to the American people about what this is all about.
Yet the same people preaching this mantra know better. They continue to lie directly to the American people without hesitation and remorse. Rep. Dan Goldman and Jamie Raskin, both lawyers, and Mr. Goldman, a former prosecutor with the SDNY from New York, will continue to lie today in this hearing and then go straight to the media to tell more lies. Hunter Biden's defense attorney, Abby Lowell, weaponizes letters to Congress to try to smear my name
Mr.
and
Chairman,
mistake the cold hard facts
Mr. Chairman,
in an attempt to save his powerfully connected client and his father.
All right, so what you're hearing here is Ranking Member Jamie Raskin, who was just identified by the witness, Tony Bobulinski, as someone who will go and continue to lie on behalf of Joe Biden. It is very, very improper and rare to interrupt a witness's opening statement. All right, that's why Tony Bobulinski is confused. He looks up and then he just continues because Jamie Raskin shouldn't be speaking up. He's begging for a break here. He's begging to distract. He's begging to stop this statement because he thinks it's wrong that he was just called a liar, which is pretty rich considering what comes out of Jamie Raskin's mouth on a regular basis about people like Tony Bobulinski, about Republicans, about you, frankly, because he holds you in contempt for daring to support a Republican. Tony Bobulinski. So this entire thing starts to devolve immediately. During the first opening statement, the Democrats start interrupting and start trying to stop the proceeding and devolving it into a circus. Watch how it proceeds.
I challenge Mr. Lowell to make those claims on national television so he can be held accountable for his lies. Prior to my successful business career, I was an officer in the United States Navy. At Navy's elite Naval Nuclear Power Training Command, I later served as the command's chief technology officer.
Proceed. I apologize for the disruption from the.
Okay. Am I supposed to say it's my time, Mr. Raskin?
Yeah, but please, Mr. Bobulinski, please
Okay.
come to order. Mr. Bobulinski, please proceed.
Okay.
Please proceed. I apologize for the disruption from the minority.
Okay.
well, Mr. Chairman, it saved his time, but he called members of this committee liars, and I just want to know whether the order and decorum requirements of House Rule 11 apply to witnesses appearing before the committee.
All right, so what that means is if a fellow member of Congress is not supposed to call their colleagues liars. Smurf is fine, but not liars. Because it goes against the decorum of the House. So Jamie Raskin is now saying, well, doesn't that apply to witnesses? We can't. Who does this man think he is? I don't care that he served in the Navy. I don't care that he was smart enough to graduate from nuclear power school. I don't care that he's an American citizen and a voter. No, you know what, Jamie Raskin? It's our God-given right to be able to call the likes of you liars. Jamie Raskin, how dare a measly little voter who's just the scum on the bottom of my shoe, how dare he think that he can come into my house, my room, my chamber, and call the likes of me? Don't you know who I am? You don't call me a liar. No, actually, Jamie Raskin, that's exactly how every single elected official should be treated by its citizenry. Every single elected official should be called liars and whatever we want to call them. And by the way, keep your mouth shut and just go about your business. And if you don't want that kind of abuse and kind of reaction from the citizenry, maybe you should find a new line of work. Okay? That's how we roll here in the United States of America. But Jamie Raskin wants to make sure that this fits in with the decorum of the House, because Jamie Raskin, he's all about decorum.
Does it apply or does it not?
Should I address? I don't.
There's decorum from the members. We've asked for that. There's no language that I'm aware of pertaining to a witness.
Thank you.
So don't make sure we didn't waste any of his time on the opening statement. Mr. Bobulinski, I'm sorry for the disruption. Please continue your opening statement.
I think you, Mr. Raskin, used.
We'll make sure it's right. We'll make sure.
Okay, great. I just want to.
All right. So the conclusion is Mr. Bobulinski, call Jamie Raskin and Representative Goldman liar as much as you want, dude. We don't mind that at all. In fact, we want more. Thank you. That was Chairman Jason Smith, though, there from Ways and Means, advising his friend James Comer. This is a good crew, these three. They know what they're doing. All right, moving on. Tony Bobulinski had much more to say.
I want to be crystal clear. From my direct personal experience and what I've subsequently come to learn, it is clear to me that Joe Biden was the brand being sold by the Biden family. His family's foreign influence peddling operation from China to Ukraine and elsewhere sold out to foreign actors who are seeking to gain influence and access to Joe Biden and the United States government. Joe Biden was more than a participant in and a beneficiary of his family's business. He was an active, aware enabler who met with business associates such as myself to further the business, despite being buffered by a complex scheme to maintain plausible deniability. I ask this big question. If there's no evidence of corruption here today, if Joe's conduct and the conduct of his family were fully legal and proper, then why are they so dishonest about it?
That's a really good question. And why do they want to hide so much of the evidence about it? Why do they want to conceal so much about it? If these businesses were so above the board, legal and proper, why on earth do they have upwards to 30 different shell companies set up with financial bank transfers going on back and forth between all of them? Does that seem kosher to you? Does that seem legal? I'll be honest with you. If this entire business setup of Hunter Biden's and James Biden and Joe Biden's, if the entire thing was legal, then the bigger problem that we have to address is the fact that our politicians and elected officials ingrained in Washington, D.C. over the past decades have set up a system where none of this is against the law. I mean, honestly, just let's rip up all of the laws at this point. What's the point that they've created a system for themselves to enrich themselves and then none of this is illegal? Honestly, that may be the biggest scandal of all, that it's all above board and legal. But of course it's not. It isn't. And it's a great question that he asks. See, he just said that Joe Biden was a complete and total knowing, full participant and enabler in all of this. And if all of it was legal, why do they continue to lie about it? And they have lied about it. That's what today's hearing is all about the contradictory testimony. And that's why Hunter Biden didn't show up, because they had an army of witnesses tell them all of these things. And then Hunter Biden said, nope, that's wrong. That never happened. So somebody's lying. Who do you think it is? And one other thing with regard to Biden, Joe Biden and the Biden White House's arguments here, their only defense at this point is what you heard Bobulinski just say, plausible deniability. In other words, hey, they may have been doing all of this, but I didn't know anything about it. So to believe that, you have to believe that Joe Biden, when he was vice president, had ongoing frequent telephone calls and text message exchanges with his son about this business. And he never realized that he was the product and he was the brand that was being sold. You also have to believe that he had multiple phone calls with his son where his son would put him on speakerphone in front of the gathered assembly from Russia or Ukraine or from China or from Kazakhstan or whatever other country was giving them money for access and influence. Talked to all of them in the room on the speakerphone, and just asked about the weather and exchanged pleasantries, and never actually realized that what he was doing was demonstrating to those clients that his son had access to the vice president of the United States. To believe Joe Biden's position on all of this, you have to think that when he stopped by a restaurant in Georgetown on his way home from the White House, he actually directed the motorcade to veer off of Connecticut Avenue instead of going up to Massachusetts and then going straight home to the Naval Observatory, turn left, head to Georgetown, stop in the middle of a busy street with a motorcade blocking traffic, with motorcycle cops stopping traffic on M Street. He walks into the restaurant, goes into the back, and Secret Service has to sweep the restaurant, of course. He goes into the back room, poses for a picture, meets with the mayor of Moscow, leaves the motorcade, then turns the motorcade back over onto Massachusetts Avenue, back to the Naval Observatory. He did all of that just because he wanted to stop by and see his son, who happened to be in town. And then a couple of weeks later, a $10 to $20 million bank transfer came from the very same people who were in that restaurant. And you have to believe that Joe Biden knew nothing about any of those things. In other words, you have two choices. Joe Biden is a corrupt crook who knew full well all of the money he was making for his family, and he was a full participant in all of it. Or Joe Biden, who has been working in government for 50 years and helped write some of these laws about influence peddling. Joe Biden, that guy is a complete and total moron, ignoramus, fool, dunce. I still like to think that it could be both. But either way, I think we have a problem in the White House, don't you? Here's an exchange with Jim Jordan with Tony Bobulinski that really gets to the nub of a lot of the things they're going to be talking about today.
Mr. Bobulinski, who's the big guy? Are you sure about that? Because when
Jordan, Joe Biden.
You're sure?
I'm 1,000% sure.
Because when Hunter Biden did his deposition under oath, he said, I don't know who it is, even though he was copied on an email that said H will hold 10% for the big guy. You sure it's the big guy is Joe Biden?
1,000%. And there's other text messages that back that up, that the brave whistleblowers, Shapley and Ziegler, have produced, not from my phones, not from my BlackBerry that I took screenshots from. They took them from subpoenas directly from Apple's iCloud that back up the fact that Hunter knew the big guy was Joe Biden.
The big guy is the brand. The big guy is the lift. The big guy is the one who showed up at golf outings, who took phone calls and meetings and lunches and dinners with Hunter Biden and his business associates. Is that right?
Correct.
The ranking member.
Why is that important? Well, because we've got emails where Hunter Biden is discussing all of his business dealings, and he's talking about 10% for the big guy. You know that. We've been talking about it forever, but now we have for the first time sworn testimony under oath in front of this impeachment hearing, impeachment inquiry, where Tony Bobulinski, one of the insiders, one of the businessmen, is no doubt. We've got text messages. We've got tons of evidence. You've seen it. It's all been under subpoena. Yes. Joe Biden is the big guy. He got his share of this money. Jim Jordan, chairman of the Judiciary Committee, he continues on a very important string. I'm going to let this play out for quite some time here. Watch.
Who planted the pipe bombs on January 6th? Nobody seems to know. Who leaked the Dobbs draft opinion? You know, the leak that led to an assassination attempt on Justice Kavanaugh. How about this one? Who left cocaine at the White House? Biden administration doesn't seem to have time to answer these questions. They're too busy investigating parents at school board meetings, labeling Catholics extremists, retaliating against whistleblowers. They're too busy putting together a sweetheart deal for Hunter Biden, a deal that got laughed out of court. And oh, the guy who put together the deal that got laughed out of court, that's the guy they name special counsel. You know what Democrats do have time for? Going after President Trump. They've been doing it for 8 years. They spied on his campaign. Then it was the Mueller investigation, 19 lawyers, 40 agents, $30 million, and found nothing. Then it was impeachment. Then it was raid his home. Then it was a special counsel. Then it was the 14th Amendment. The party of democracy said, we're going to keep the guy off the ballot who's leading in every single poll. The ranking member said that President Trump should be disqualified from even running for office. Thank goodness we have a Supreme Court who disagreed with the ranking member and the Democrats. 9-0. Not 5-4, not 6-3, not 7-2, not 8-1, 9-0. They disagreed. Now Democrats say, how dare Republicans investigate Joe Biden? How dare they look into the money, the business, and the brand? Millions of dollars, as the chairman said, millions of dollars from foreign entities run through 20 different companies for what? 20 different companies for what? Devin Archer told us what it was for. Access to the brand. And the brand was Joe Biden. The brand that played rounds of golf, took calls and meetings, attended lunches and dinners with Hunter Biden and his business partners. The brand that said, the brand that conditioned $1 billion of American tax money on the firing of the prosecutor pressuring the company Hunter Biden sat on the board of. And oh, by the way, was getting paid $1 million a year. Today, we're going to learn more about that brand. We're going to learn more about what Mr. Galanis called the Biden lift. We'll learn about the plausible deniability that Jim Biden talked to Mr. Bobulinski about. And we'll hear about the statement, the rule that governed how the business operated around Joe Biden. The rule that said, say it, forget it, write it, regret it. So I want to thank our witnesses for coming here today. They, like the whistleblowers who came to the Ways and Means Committee, are doing it simply because they want the American people to have the truth. I yield back.
Jim Jordan, one of the best. And what you just saw, that is what today's hearing is all about. It's continuing right now. There's going to be more developments as the day goes on. And no doubt we will have plenty more to say about it tomorrow on this show. But I beg you, keep your eye at townhall.com, refresh on a regular basis, watch our social media feeds for ongoing updates of video testimony and the write-ups from our great team at Town Hall. This is an important day. And Jim Jordan just summed up exactly what it's all about. And I remind you, the Democrats, how seriously are they taking this? They show up wearing Halloween masks. Boy, do we deserve better. A quick word from our friends over at handsoffmyrewards.com. You like your rewards from your credit cards? I do. Of course you do. So that's why the government wants to mess with them. Because how dare you actually like something that free market's providing? Millions of Americans earn and use their credit card rewards right now. Corporate megastores, they want to take those rewards away from you. Rewards we use on groceries and school supplies, the cash back to save on gas and grow our small businesses, travel miles we use to make memories. The Durbin-Marshall credit card bill would eliminate credit card rewards. No more travel miles, no more cash back. When lawmakers help corporate megastores line their pockets, you and I are the ones to pay for it. Everyday Americans, we pay for it. Our families, we end up paying for it. Tell your senator to oppose the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. Go to handsoffmyrewards.com. You'll get all the information you need, all the tools to be able to contact your senator directly, and you can take action. You got to do it today. Handsoffmyrewards.com. 6 years ago, Christine Blasey Ford delivered testimony that was completely uncorroborated, completely unbelievable, and had millions of holes in it that was just completely impossible to verify. It was meant to kill the Supreme Court nomination of Brett Kavanaugh. She was used by Democrats and pro-abortion activist groups to try to keep Brett Kavanaugh off of the Supreme Court. Donald Trump, the president of the United States, and quite possibly the most heroic and courageous move he made in his entire presidency, stood by Brett Kavanaugh. And I guarantee you There were advisors in that White House that said, Mr. President, the heat is too much on this. Even if Brett Kavanaugh is telling the truth, this is a Me Too thing. This has to do with sexual assault. It's just not worth it. Let's just move on. We got plenty of other justices that we can put in place. And Donald Trump said, no. Hold on. You just said, even if it's not true. If it's not true, why would we do this to this good man? No. We'll stand by him unless they deliver real evidence that shows that this is true. I'm not gonna abandon this man and throw him under the bus the way you do in Washington, D.C., and treat him like garbage under the guise of even if it's not true. And of course, he held his ground. Kavanaugh was confirmed, and he's on the Supreme Court today. Fast forward to yesterday, 6 years later. Christine Blasey Ford, the woman who delivered that testimony, appeared on The View. No one asked her a critical question. No one challenged anything about her story. No one even raised all of the doubts that had been raised 6 years ago and continue to remain unanswered to this day. Nope. This was not an interview of Christine Blasey Ford. This was a slumber party. It was a full body massage. Take a look at a little of it.
Yeah. So Brett Kavanaugh, he has continued to deny that he ever assaulted you. But you say, this is interesting, you say that the anger on his face during the hearings is imprinted on you forever. He was so angry with you for calling him out and ruining his pristine reputation. So how do you...
I gotta stop there. I gotta stop there because Joy Behar's interpretation of the anger on Brett Kavanaugh's face is communicated to her audience in this way. Brett Kavanaugh was really angry that day because he got called out. I don't know, Joy. I could be wrong here. I'm just spitballing. I'm just throwing something against the wall. We'll see if it sticks or not. Work with me on this. It's a hypothetical. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe, just maybe, Brett Kavanaugh was angry that day because he had been falsely accused of rape. Would you be angry? I'd be angry. Why do I want to interrupt right here and interject this? Because I'm a man, and this could have happened to any man. I'm a father. This could have happened to any of our sons. If you're not as angry as Brett Kavanaugh was that day, there's something wrong with you, honestly. But that righteous anger that Brett Kavanaugh showed that day is now being, well, of course he was angry because he was called out. He was appropriately angry because he was falsely accused of the worst thing you can be accused of. And the fact that that isn't even considered by Joy Behar tells you what a partisan, ignorant hack she is. That said, let's hear what else she has to say.
You make sense of the fact that you were forced into hiding. People were threatening your life and your family's lives, while he is elevated to the nation's highest bench, making incredibly consequential decisions about lives, our lives, for example, and yours, particularly women's rights.
Yeah, it's really hard to come to terms with, and I had to just detach from the outcome a month before you saw me on TV because it was so stressful even thinking about it. And I didn't know what kind of impact it would have. And when he was confirmed, I just had to go into radical acceptance mode and accept that that was the outcome. But the lovely unexpected outcome was this outpouring from sexual assault survivors and citizens from around the world saying that they learned civic duty and patriotism and all the things that are important to all of us.
All right, a couple of things here. I'd love to know more about these death threats that apparently Christine Blasey Ford has had to endure. Have they been investigated? Has anyone been arrested? Is there any legitimacy to the claim of death threats? Because I do know one person who has actually had a legitimate death threat. That would be Brett Kavanaugh, where a man was arrested outside of his home with a backpack full of zip ties and weapons and a plan to kidnap him and his daughters and his wife and cause them physical harm. And the fact that that's not mentioned in this entire charade that's being presented to the American people. All of it. Go into hiding, by the way, and have to be a recluse. She makes money on speaking gigs. She's been given awards. She was offered a special chair at the University of North Carolina. She's celebrated. Brett Kavanaugh is still vilified. Brett Kavanaugh still has people protesting outside of his home, and Merrick Garland's Justice Department does nothing about it, even though it's a violation of federal law. Where was the person on the panel of The View to point that out? More.
Holding the brick to open kind of a space for people that are strong enough to stand up, because Anita Hill did it. Then with that example, you are there if someone else needs to. You've made it a little easier for someone to come forward. But after all that you've been through, do you have any regrets? Would you do it all the same again?
I would definitely do it again. It was the worst thing ever. So I would do it again. It was terrible afterward for a couple of years. I had a couple of very bad years, but I survived it. It's survivable. And that's, people would say like, oh, they're going to ruin your life, and say all these very abstract things that I didn't really know what they meant. And so this book is a little bit, some concrete examples of what might happen and how people might better navigate it, because there will be another person.
Yeah. Really fast, I just was wondering, those letters that you got, what was the percentage of men writing to you?
So there were probably 10% men. So we had bins called mail, and so that's where we would put the mail.
See, what men need to understand is that they have to step up and help us. We can't do this ourselves. I noticed that a lot. I watched when people were clapping. Some of the men did not clap in this audience.
And as many as 1 in 3 women will face sexual assault. So you're not by any means alone in this. What do you hope?
That's the conservative voice on the panel there, Alyssa Farah, who, by the way, worked for Vice President Mike Pence at the time of the Brett Kavanaugh hearings. I don't know if she volunteered that during this interview or talked about what her role was in this entire thing, because now she wants to be on the cool kids side of the fence. I love Joy Behar, by the way, publicly shaming the people in her own audience who don't actually apply, who actually see this entire thing play out and recognize the fraud that it is, and see their own life pass before their eyes, because God forbid a woman shows up 30, 40 years later without any facts at hand and deliver this kind of testimony to try to ruin your life. Yeah, I'm be concerned about the men who do applaud this woman at this point. And I'm just not falsely accusing her of lies. We're going to break down all of the lies, major lies that she delivered in her testimony in just a moment, because of course, well, Joy Behar certainly didn't do that, did she? No one on that panel did. Listen to the question asked, though, by the conservative voice on the table, Alyssa Farah.
Readers take away from your book, if they take one thing away from it?
I think people hopefully will be able to relate to a lot of different things in the book, like what it's like to speak up in any setting and what it's like to face retaliation, and but also that it's survivable, and it's more important that we all find a way to be civil and respectful and listen to each other and support each other.
All right, there's more of this, but I just have to pause a moment here because we're getting into the substance of this and attacking her arguments and her substance. And I try not to get personal, but good God, her voice, what is with that? Why? Why is it always a way? Yes, thank you, emergency recovery coordinator. Oh my God. It's like listening to a 12-year-old girl with the vocal fry and the up-talking and the I'm going to take a moment here. I was going to wait until a little later, but let me just explain what's really going on here. Can I give you a little revelation? And it's all going to make sense. She's on The View to sell a book. 6 years after the events, she's selling a book. Now, Mollie Hemmingway from The Federalist co-authored a book with Carrie Severino about the Kavanaugh hearings and about what went on behind the scenes and blowing away all of the lies that Christine Blasey Ford said on the witness stand during her hearing. That book was released between 6 and 8 months after the Kavanaugh hearings. They got their book out pretty quickly. Why did it take her 6 years to get her book out? I'm going to tell you why. It didn't. It didn't take 6 years for her to get her book out. Her ghostwriter could have written this book and maybe even did write this book probably within a year of the hearings if they wanted to. The ghostwriter could have cranked this thing out for her and she could put her name on it. It didn't have to wait 6 years. Why did it wait 6 years? Well, take a look at her. Take a look at that picture of her. That's Christine Blasey Ford. Do you know who she reminds you of? Or I'll put it another way. Who does she iconically, physically represent to you? Christine Blasey Ford represents the last hope for the Biden candidacy and the Democrats retaining the White House this fall. Why did it take 6 years for this book to come out? It deliberately took 6 years to come out because 6 years later happens to be the presidential election year. This book came out right now at this time because the Democrats and the media and the book publishers and Joe Biden have an election to win. And Christine Blasey Ford, everything about her is exactly what Joe Biden and the Democrats need to win the election. There are 3 demographic groups in this country right now who are voting for Donald Trump, some of them in overwhelming fashion. Single men, married men, and married women. There is one demographic group that is overwhelmingly voting for Joe Biden and the Democrats, and that's single women. The difference maker in this election is Christine Blasey Ford and millions of other women like her. Married, professional, suburban, educated women. She represents what Biden needs. And she is being trotted out as a heroic victim that Donald Trump and Republicans and men just like your husband has tried to ruin. And all your friends on The View love her. You know that show you watch every day? Do you want to be on her wrong side? She's just like your best friend. Do you want to make an enemy of her? Of course not. She's just like me. She's just like my friends that I drink Chardonnay with once a week when we play Boggle. I stand by Christine Blasey Ford 6 years later, and there's no way I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. That's why all of this is happening. And boy, oh boy, did the ladies on The View do their part.
Yes. Well, you've been called a highly credible witness, and you have a PhD in psychology. You're a professor. You teach at Palo Alto and Stanford universities. But even today, some people remain skeptical of your story. And you write that during the hearing, Senator Lindsey Graham wouldn't even make eye contact with you. Were you prepared for that kind of response?
I was prepared ahead of time that none of the Republicans were going to speak with me, and they were going to use an outside interviewer. And so I was actually surprised at how kind some of the other Republican senators were who broke that protocol and said hello.
Who was that? Can you name a good one?
Senator Flake and Senator Sass both came over and said
Neither
hello.
was in Congress anymore, right?
Yeah. But still, a credit there.
Yeah,
Yes,
credit.
good for them.
Both good men.
Yeah, those are the good ones, the ones that we don't have to worry about anymore, who aren't in Congress. By the way, they hated Ben Sass when he was there. The only thing they liked about him was that he opposed Donald Trump. They hated Jeff Flake, too. And Jeff Flake only did that sort of thing and opposed Donald Trump. And I think eventually ended up voting for Kavanaugh, by the way. Both of them did. Jeff Flake only decided to oppose Donald Trump publicly and vociferously when he decided that he wasn't going to run for re-election. Okay, those are the only good Republicans that the ladies on The View will enjoy. And that's the only kind of Republican that Christine Blasey Ford will say anything nice about. But my favorite part of this entire thing was at the very beginning, this part.
And you have a PhD in psychology. You're a professor. You teach at Palo Alto and Stanford universities.
You see, they're using credentials to show that, listen, she got a PhD. She teaches at Stanford. She wouldn't lie. Right? If you're educated and you have degrees, you would never lie. Who lies if they've got all those degrees? I mean, okay, maybe Anthony Fauci. And then there's this.
But even today, some people remain skeptical.
Even today, some people remain skeptical. The majority of Americans remain skeptical. Well, not just skeptical. We think she's a liar. Why? Well, let's get back to the aforementioned Mollie Hemmingway, who, as I said, along with Carrie Severino, wrote that book. It's called Justice on Trial. She gave equal time, or she wasn't given equal time on The View, of course, but she gave her response on the X platform. And let's just go through this line by line, shall we? It's pretty exhaustive. There's no evidence that Ford and Kavanaugh ever met. Think about that for a minute. She is accusing him of sexual assault when they were teenagers 40 years ago, and there is no evidence that they ever even met. Not that they were ever in the same room together, that they ever met. She could provide no evidence to prove that she even knew Brett Kavanaugh. Number two, Leland Kaiser, who is the supposedly the girl that Christine Blasey Ford identified as being in the house the day that this event happened, she said she had no confidence in any of her friend's story. Number three, friends pressured Ms. Kaiser to change her story. Did you know that? She came out and said, yeah, I don't remember this story ever happening. And suddenly friends all went after her and said, you can't do that. You kidding? We've got Roe v. Wade to protect here. Number four, all alleged witnesses strongly dispute the claim. Not just, oh, I don't recall. Not just, geez, my memory's foggy about that. No, every single person who was named by Christine Blasey Ford as a witness that could put her in the same house, the same room as Brett Kavanaugh, every single one of them strongly deny this ever happened. Number five, her own father supported the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh. Think about that for a minute. His daughter is saying that this guy raped her, and he's still supporting his confirmation for the Supreme Court. Ford doesn't know the location where it occurred. She could not give you the address. She could not give you the house. All she told you was the neighborhood, Chevy Chase, Maryland. I drive through Chevy Chase, Maryland every single day. There are thousands of houses in Chevy Chase, Maryland. Ford doesn't know how she got to this house where it allegedly occurred. She doesn't know how she got home from that house. Ford doesn't know the date or what time of week it happened. Ford somehow remembers, though, given all of those things she doesn't remember, she does remember that she had one beer, but nothing else. No other details. Kavanaugh's contemporaneous calendars support his claim that it never happened. You see, Brett Kavanaugh, and I don't know, maybe this is just one of those weird things that if you're this kind of person as a teenager in high school, you end up being on the Supreme Court. But as a teenager, he had these meticulous calendars where he would keep notes of all of his appointments and all of his things and practice and parties. And he would, after the fact, I guess like a diary, write down things that happened. There is no notation anywhere in any of those meticulously kept calendars that after school one day and after practice, he was at a house with a couple of friends. Nowhere, anywhere. They went through every single day. Christine Blasey Ford changed the date of the incident by years from her initial stories. Character witnesses from the time support Brett Kavanaugh. In other words, people who knew them at the time say Brett was a great guy. And by the way, those who knew Christine Blasey Ford, they said she was kind of, what's the word? Flaky, let's say. She was sort of flaky. Ford's first mention of Brett Kavanaugh's name publicly recorded at any time whatsoever is in 2012. Why? Because he became a national figure in 2012. Why? Because he was a lawyer that had worked in the Bush administration. And Mitt Romney had mentioned him potentially as a Supreme Court justice should he win the presidency. And suddenly, Christine Blasey Ford says, oh, I went to the sister school of his old boys' school back in the day in Montgomery County, Maryland. And suddenly she starts talking about him. Number 15. False claims were made about Christine Blasey Ford's inability to fly. Remember when they wanted to fly her out to give her testimony? See, she resisted coming and doing the testimony, and we were told it was because she's afraid to fly. That's a lie. There's documented evidence that she took overseas trips. She flew to Europe with her family. She was not afraid of flying. Before she testified, she scrubbed all of her social media, which is a very suspicious move. She said she wanted to stay confidential, but the first call she made was to the Washington Post. That's not what a person who wants to hide her identity does. You don't go to the media immediately. Ford's attorney admitted they had a motive. Their motive was they wanted to have an asterisk next to Kavanaugh's name, just like Clarence Thomas. Clarence Thomas is probably one of the greatest Supreme Court justices this nation has ever had. And yet there are still people today, as you just heard in that segment on The View, where they talk about Anita Hill. Number 19, Ford has benefited politically, financially, and socially from this entire episode. And finally, nothing in Kavanaugh's past remotely similar to the claim. For 37 years, we're led to believe that this person did this thing when he was a teenager, and then for 37 years never did any other incident that matched this kind of behavior. Did any of that come up on The View? None of it did. None of it. Thank you, Mollie Hemmingway, for that exhaustive detailing. And I'll throw one more thing out there, because during the hearing, they said that she just wanted the truth to come out, and she just wanted it investigated. Well, when she finally picked up the phone and called somebody to blow the whistle on Brett Kavanaugh, she didn't call the FBI. She didn't call law enforcement. She called a politician. She called a Democrat. She called Senator Dianne Feinstein. That's not somebody who just wants the truth to get out. That's someone who acts politically. And the only reason that all of this is out in the open again is because they have an election to win. Joe Biden would love to win that election in any way whatsoever, and that means, just like Christine Blasey Ford, he wants to lie. He will lie to you no matter what. Joe Rogan, the incredibly influential podcaster, he is sick and tired and fed up of the lies. He's fed up of the lies from the media. He's fed up of the lies from Democrats and from Joe Biden, and he brought it out on his podcast. I'm going to show that to you in just a moment. But first, I want you to see the latest egregious, outrageous, disgusting, despicable lie from Joe Biden, your president of the United States. This is an ad that they put out on his Twitter feed. Take a look.
Now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. Jews will not replace us. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
Are you willing to condemn white supremacists and militia groups?
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by.
Please rise for the horribly and unfairly treated January 6th hostages.
There'll be a lot of pardons and commutations of January 6th defendants.
Yes, absolutely.
Tell your supporters now, no matter what, no violence.
And it's going to be a bloodbath.
That right there, by the way, is the entirety of the message you'll hear from the Biden re-election campaign between now and November. That's all they've got. And it's a lie, by the way. You know, usually when a president runs for re-election, it's like, let's have 4 more years of this great success. Look at all these great things that I've done, and let's keep it going. Nope, he's got none of that. You know he's got none of that. Everybody knows he's got none of that. That's why he's underwater in the polls. No, the only thing he's got is to lie about Donald Trump and to terrify you about him. It's not elect Joe Biden. It's, what does it say? Stop Trump. That's what it is. That's their political message. And for his part, Joe Rogan is done with it. He took the false lie of the bloodbath and he spun with it.
I mean, I'm sure you're aware of this recent Donald Trump speech where he talked about a bloodbath.
Oh God, yeah.
And what the actual phrase was. See if you can find that, Jamie, because it's actually important to highlight how not just inaccurate, but it's just deceptive the media was in their depiction of what he said, and that they are taking this quote out of context and trying to say that there's going to be a civil war if he doesn't get elected, which is not what he was talking about at all. See, pull it up, because it's so disturbing that they would, first of all, that they would think that they could get away with it in this day and age with all the scrutiny and all the with social media and all the independent journalists that exist now, which is one of the more interesting things about the demise of corporate media, the demise in trust. Trust in corporate media is at an all-time low, and so this has led to a rise in true independent journalists, the real ones out there, the Matt Taibbi's, the Glenn Greenwalds, the people that are actually just trying to say what is really going on and what are the influences behind these things and why are these things happening.
Yeah, and it's great
I'm
that,
sure.
that Rogan gets this, that, you know, the fact that they would take that line, bloodbath, and make it sound like he was calling for a civil war. And by the way, it's important for us, every single time they deliver this lie in such a blatant, disgusting, and outrageous way as Joe Biden did here, it's important for us to remind you of the truth. Especially if this is the first time you're seeing one of these videos. Here, once again, here's the very beginning of Joe Biden's new ad.
Now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country.
Okay, so now what did what did Donald Trump actually say when he used the term bloodbath?
China now is building a couple of massive plants where they're going to build the cars in Mexico and they think that they're going to sell those cars into the United States with no tax at the border. Let me tell you something to China. If you're listening, President Xi, and you and I are friends, but he understands the way I deal, those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, and you think you're going to get that, you're going to not hire Americans, and you're going to sell the cars to us. Now, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. All
right. So it's not just a lie. It's a despicable lie. It's a gross lie. It's a disgusting lie. It's a volatile lie. It's a lie that continues to heighten our already pre-existing divisions and makes one side of the equation think that those who are voting for Donald Trump are calling for a civil war and a bloodbath in the streets. It doesn't get worse than that. And he just took that and put it into an ad, right? And then, all right, now let's go to the next part of the ad. So we got to do this because this is who else is doing it? Who else is doing that? George Stephanopoulos isn't doing this. Are you kidding? He's repeating the lies. Okay, so now they go show footage of Charlottesville.
But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
All right, so they show footage of white nationalists, white supremacists causing havoc in the streets, saying that Jews will not replace us. They're showing Klansmen, they're showing swastikas, and then they show Trump say, well, there were very fine people on both sides. And I want you to take a look at this picture right here. This is from a press conference that he gave at the lobby, I believe, of Trump Tower, and you see the marble. See that marble wall behind him there, right? That's from the press conference. Look, here's some more footage that I found. This is the same marble wall. See that? Same marble wall. Because this is from the exact same press conference. In fact, this is just moments after he said the very fine people thing. Now, listen to this. Have you seen this? Watch this.
So you know what? It's fine. You're changing history. You're changing culture. And you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay?
So the very fine people on both sides obviously excluded the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, who he literally just said should be condemned. But they lie. They lie for the purpose of continuing to divide us further. We are divided. But their lies divide us even further. And their lies, listen, if we're a divided nation, there's nothing we're never going to hold hands and sing Kumbaya. We're going to be divided. We're going to disagree about things, right? But what they're doing on the opposite side of the political aisle right now, what they're doing with our pre-existing divisions, is that they are turning that built-in, understandable division into hatred, into a kind of othering that is tantamount to saying, if you disagree with me politically, you're not just wrong. And in fact, you're not just bad. You're an evil, violent criminal who should be locked up. Not just this guy, but anyone who supports him or votes for him. That's what they're doing with these lies. And you know the truth. We know the truth. So what do? We just keep our head down and let them say this to us and wait until November? Is that our only choice? Or do we actually not just talk back, not just shout back, scream back at them and scream the truth? I want to tell you something. And I've never told this story before publicly, but I want to tell you. I have several young men in my life who I am honored to mentor in a very small way. And one of them found himself living in my house for a while, a 22-year-old young black man from Dallas. And he grew up, as Andrew Breitbart would say, his factory setting was Democrat. He came out of the box as a Democrat. That was the factory setting. That was Andrew Breitbart's factory setting, too. It wasn't until he had a political coming of age. Actually, it was during the Clarence Thomas hearings where he recognized that Joe Biden, the chairman of those hearings, and Democrats were bad people. And they treated Clarence Thomas in a bad way. And that started to change the settings, the factory settings. So this young black man is staying in our house during the pandemic for a couple of weeks. And we never talk politics. There's more important things in life to talk about than politics, right? And he's a great kid. And I, I love and admiration for him. He's like a son to me at this point, years later. But he said, he finally said, he says, Larry, I got to ask you. You're a great guy. You're clearly not racist. I see the love and compassion you have for my buddies and my friends when they come over and great, So how is it you support Donald Trump? He finally went there. He finally asked me that question. I've been waiting for it. You're not racist, so why do you support the racist president? And I said, can you tell me one example of what you think Donald Trump has done or said that's racist? And without hesitation, it was Charlottesville. It was calling Klansmen and neo-Nazis very fine people. He said, yeah, I've seen the video where he called these Klansmen and those neo-Nazis, the people in Charlottesville, he called them very fine people. And I said, okay, let's talk about it. And I pulled up the video. But the video version that I pulled up was the edited, chopped up version that Joe Biden used for his announcement that he was running for president. Remember when he said, I had to run for president to renew the soul of our nation when I saw Donald Trump call these neo-Nazis very fine people. Do you remember that? Joe Biden's entire campaign for president was built on a lie. So I showed this young man this video that Joe Biden had put out. And this young man said, yeah, that's it. That's the video I'm talking about. There he is calling neo-Nazis and Klansmen very fine people. And then I showed him this video, the video that I just showed you.
History, you're changing culture, and you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that.
I showed him that. And I got to tell you something. His face, I just want to reiterate, this is a young black man from Dallas who everyone in his life, everyone who's surrounded him have all been Democrats. This is what they do. He said, this is what my family does. This is what my neighborhood does. We wouldn't even imagine voting for anyone else. And when he saw that, when I showed him the truth about what Donald Trump said that day, he wasn't surprised. He wasn't shocked. He was furious. He was furious at Joe Biden. He was furious at Democrats. He was furious at the media. He was furious at his friends and his teachers and the people in his neighborhood. He was furious that he had been lied to, that he had been taken advantage of, that he had been taken for granted. How do we push back against the lies? It's insurmountable, right? We'll never be able to get the truth out. They own all of the streams of media. They did. How do we tell the truth? How do we push back? How do we fight? How do we scream at the rooftops what's really happening here? One person at a time. That's all we can do. That's all we can do. And have faith and have hope that when they see the truth, They'll do exactly what this young man did. I don't know who he voted for. This was, again, summer of 2020. And I don't know who he voted for in November. But he made a point to tell me that he did not vote for Joe Biden. And we left it at that. Now, speaking of the lies that are being told to stop Donald Trump, we also have lawfare being used to stop Donald Trump. We have unprecedented use of our court system and a complete and total twisting of our basic jurisprudence and laws in this country to try to bankrupt Donald Trump and stop him from being able to run a campaign. They even tried to keep him off the ballot. Thankfully, the Supreme Court stepped in on that. But the fallout from the judgment against him in New York for his basic acceptable business dealings in that city with regard to loans and real estate, it continues to have a ripple effect. And Kevin O'Leary has probably been the best outspoken advocate, not for Donald Trump, but for the truth and for basic fairness in our judicial system. And as a businessman, he's been a voice of reason for business to be able to absolutely transpire in this country without the threat of another lawsuit like we saw against Donald Trump. He was on CNN, again, speaking truth to power, and it's brilliant.
I don't think this case is about Trump anymore. I think this case is about New York. It's about the American brand. It's about what we promised the world in terms of fairness and justice and investing capital in a country that's built the largest economy on earth. Forfeiture, seizing of assets. Is that in our nomenclature in America? Is that what we tell people that want to bring their money here and protect property rights? Forget about Trump. Nothing to do with Trump. You think this is good for business in New York? You think this is good for business in America? To take a law that we used to protect people against buying refrigerators at an overpriced value decades ago and apply it against an individual and then talk about seizing assets like he was in Venezuela or in Cuba? This is a very, very, very bad look for New York. And everybody around the world is watching this. This may be great for the Attorney General, but this is not good for America.
But in terms of the valuation, can you be clear as to why? I mean, why would the properties not be sufficient collateral?
What a great message to send out all around the world. Take a claim where there was no monies lost. There was no fraud here in the context of actually people losing money. Deutsche Bank, who made the loan, was made whole. And let's make a penalty of $500 million against a crime, apparently, where no monies were lost. Great message for New York. Great message for America. Bring your capital because we'll protect your property. I think that was a statement that would be much better made sometime in Venezuela. I'm not kidding. That's a scary, scary message. And by the way, there are no such thing as $500 million bonds. There are no $500 million bonds. Never been done before. Never. This law has never been applied. Forget about Trump. Nothing to do with Trump. Everything to do about America and the New York brand. I love this state. My children live here. A horrible message to everybody around the world watching this. Absolutely horrific.
Well, wait, Kevin, but hold on a second. Kevin,
Trump
what would
will
be
be gone one day. This
hold on a
Attorney
second.
General will be gone one day. And this
I
is
have
what
a
you want to
wonderful
tell
voice,
people
and
around
it
the
won't
world.
be talked
This
over.
is how we
Kevin
treat money
O'Leary,
in America.
I would like to
This
hear what you have
is
to
not
say, but
America.
what are you doing?
Not America.
But it's not America, but it is.
I don't.
He's very upset. You know, you don't bring a guest on and ask them their opinion and then start yelling at them because they're delivering it. I understand she doesn't like crosstalk, and I don't like crosstalk on these shows either. But listen, if that's who you have with Kevin O'Leary, what is this? I have a wonderful voice and it won't be spoken over. I do love it when news anchors and hosts of shows start talking to their guests like they're children. It went a little bit friendlier, but with a very similar and frankly even more powerful message over there on Fox News Channel. Here's Kevin O'Leary a little more.
But more importantly, the message about the American brand. You think about America, the reason this is the number one economy on earth is that we have laws and we have due process and we have property rights. It attracts foreign capital from all around the world. All of that is being shaken to the core here. The concept of seizing assets in 30 days on a bond number that's never been issued. No insurance bond company's ever issued anything near this. So there was no chance it was going to happen. And only giving 30 days notice and time, that's a really bad message. And I think New Yorkers should think well past Trump, whether he's president or not, or whether this attorney general is gone in 4 years or not, it's irrelevant. This is case setting against the American brand, the most stable country on earth, anywhere to put capital to work over a long period of time, particularly in real estate, is the United States of America. This is an assault on what we believe to be core. And I find it extraordinary. I think it's very troubling. It has absolutely nothing to do with Donald Trump at this point, in my view, and it is completely bipartisan. This is an attack on America. And I don't know how you can look at it any other way. And as an investor, and I know plenty of investors are completely disturbed by this, but I mean, no one is going to put any money to work in New York in these amounts until this thing settles down. The whole world is watching, and everybody's waiting for one thing we haven't got yet: adult supervision. Where is it? Where are the adults in this crazy narrative? Certainly there's got to be adult supervision at some point. And I understand, you know, the war going on here and all the political yada, yada, woof, woof, woof. But we need an adult in the room now. This is the United States of America under siege.
Super powerful and undebatable. And you don't hear anybody actually coming up and saying, oh, no, this is all good. This is good for our economy and it's good for the way business is done. Where is that business leader who is saying that? Not even Mark Cuban can bring himself to say it. And he'll jump through any woke loop that he has to jump through to please the people that he needs to please. No, that's not what's happening here, because it's undeniable. O'Leary is powerful here also because he doesn't make it about politics and he doesn't make it about Trump. He keeps reiterating that. This has transcended Trump now. You know, last week's episode of Andrew Klavan's great podcast, honestly, kid you not, the only political podcast I listen to is Andrew Klavan, mostly because I don't want to accidentally repeat something that I hear from another political podcast. And also, I do this for a living, so why would I spend my time listening to other people do what I do, right? Any podcast I listen to isn't about news and politics. It's about other stuff, cooking, faith, Christianity, stuff like that. But Klavan I'll listen to, mostly because, you know, I feel sorry for him. He's older than me. He made a really important point this week. He talked about the price you pay, the spiritual price you pay for whatever gains you may have made, for whatever decision you make. It's all over the Bible. Our ethical monotheistic faiths, whichever one you subscribe to, is replete with the earthly choices you make and the spiritual ramifications, good and bad. Some choices that you make, or refuse to make for that matter, here on earth will have spiritual benefits or repercussions. This is exactly what we're seeing play out right now as we speak in the state of New York and in the United States of America. These politicians made a choice. This Attorney General, Letitia James, made a choice. The governor, Kathy Hochul, they made a choice. The Democrats writ large, they made a choice. They were going to throw everything they had at Donald Trump. He must be stopped, no matter what. Even if that means doing things that have never been done in this country before. Even if it means interpreting financial laws, in this case, in ways that they have never been interpreted before, because they could find a way with just a judge making the decision, not a jury, just a judge who looks at these things and determines, yep, the law has been broken and we're now going to fine you, what is it, $500 million or something? Oh, that's the bond he has to post. And collateralize every single piece of his real estate against that, so that he can appeal, because he can't appeal until you put the collateral up for that bond. And the fine that was levied for practices that every businessman that I've seen says is 100% normal. They decided to pay that price, they've decided to reinterpret all these laws and twist our laws as they exist for one purpose, and that is to get Donald Trump. And it may work. They may get him. They may get him. We have to face the fact that they may get him. We may have to face the fact that there are enough Americans here, even if they don't understand the law as it's being applied to Donald Trump, will just blindly say, I don't care. He's been found guilty and I can't vote for him. And they may win. But the price that's paid, the spiritual price that's paid, or as O'Leary is pointing out here, the very tangible price that is paid with regard to our free market economy and the way business has not just been done and executed in this country, but what has made our country thrive as still the single strongest, greatest economy for what, 80 years running now? And it was worth it to throw all of that out and criminalize basic financial transactions that have been normalized for years, but you're going to criminalize those now because you had one goal in mind, and that is to get Donald Trump. They are sick. They are sick. They are sick in the head and they are sick in the soul if they are willing to trade all of that just so they can get the bad orange man. But of course, it's not just about getting the bad orange man. There's one other part of this that's probably the most important part. You see, that bad orange man happens to be the single man that is standing in the way of them retaining power. And that's what this is all about. Yeah, to them, it's worth it to hold on to power. And it should make you ask a very simple and important question. If it's worth it to them to do all of this and twist and warp and bastardize our very financial institutions for the sake of retaining power, you got to ask yourself, good God, what kind of power do they really have? And what have they used it for, and what are they willing to use it for against us? That's quite a bit of power. Power that I don't think you or I ever agreed to give them. They've just taken it. And boy, oh boy, are they not giving it back. I will leave you with this one last thought. It's an important one that we have to remember. It's really the lesson that we learned at the beginning of this program. Congressman Jared Moskowitz, Democrat in the House of Representatives, he's a Smurf. That's it for today. We'll be back next time. Thanks for watching us. And make sure you share and subscribe. And I forgot to mention our podcast. Share and subscribe and leave a rating and a comment or a review of our podcast over at Apple Podcasts and Spotify or wherever it is you get your podcast. That means a lot to us, and it makes a big difference. That's it. We'll be back next time. My name's Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry.